Mbata, is it legacy hand? Hey, good morning, colleagues. Good morning, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. Good morning to the people who have joined us. Good morning to the Minister of the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. I'm not too sure if the Deputy Minister is here, but good morning to her. Welcome to the meeting of the Portfolio Committee today, Tuesday, the 31st of January. We have received communication that Honorable Winkler has joined the Portfolio Committee. Again, welcome back, Honorable Winkler. Welcome to Honorable Dlamini. We have already done that in the previous meeting. Can I check if there are apologies that we have received, Chile?
Not from my side, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, are there apologies that would like to register?
Chair, I did speak to Honorable Ganjo that I've got an appointment for my ankle with my specialist, but I will be in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Bryant.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, and good morning to everybody. You have mentioned already that Honourable Winkler is going to be joining our committee and is in her first meeting today. But I would just like to, if you would indulge me, just to say a big thank you to our previous member, Honourable Cheryl Phillips, who is now moving across to the Committee of the Auditor General, and also as an additional member on mining, where I think she's going to add a lot of value. But just from our side as the DA caucus, just to thank her for all of the hard work that she's done, and I think she's done it in a non-partisan fashion, and has been a very big help to the committee over the 2 years that she's been a member. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bryant. Thank you for reminding me also. Indeed, we express our well wishes to Honorable Phillips. We wish her well in the other committees that she's going to serve in. We also welcome Honorable Paulsen for the first time this year. Compliments of the new year. The briefing that I have is that we have the delegation that is led by the Director General from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment.
Chair. Yes, it's Mkono. Yes. I wanted to register that I'm on the road. My network will keep on disturbing my connection, but I'm part of the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mkono. Honorable Winkler.
Thank you to the chairperson, and please allow me to leave my video off. I'm actually quite ill at the moment, but I'd like to say I'm very excited to be back on the committee and to work with my former colleagues again. It feels like coming home. So thank you for the warm welcome, and I can see you smiling there, Chair. I'm sure we're going to do some amazing things together, and also just to extend my gratitude and appreciation to my colleague Cheryl Phillips. I know she did an amazing job on here, and she's going to be sorely missed, but I will carry on her legacy. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Winkler. Welcome. I'm sure you know yourself and Honorable Paulsen why am I smiling. But those are discussions that we will have privately. The delegation from the department is led by the minister, of course, and the deputy minister, and the director general, Ms. Chabalala. We're told the DDG Fisheries Management, Ms. Sue Middleton is here. The director Small Scale Fisheries Management, Mr. Ngongwa is here. Ms. Leseke Morongwa, the acting DDG of Forestry Management, is also here. Mr. Madula, Director of Forestry Regulation and Oversight. The DD, I suspect is the DDG Forestry Regulation, Ms. Shumani Divani, Mr. Smith Winston, Forestry Regulation and Oversight, Mr. Kobese, the Director Law Reform and Policy Coordination, Ms. Rawat, the Specialist Legal Advisor Litigation and Appeals, Advocate Patel, the Acting Chief Director Appeals Strategic Environmental Instruments, Ms. Nomsahani, the Head of the Office of the Deputy Minister, Ms. Maestri, the Chief Director Governance and Executive Support, Mr. Gift Mguni, the PLO in the Office of the Minister, Mr. Zoni Nana, the PLO in the Office of the Deputy Minister, Mr. Leon Tinis in the office, supporting the Office of the Minister, Ms. Ndibongo, Parliamentary Strategic Support in the Office of the Director General, and Ms. Mbogoto, an intern in the Office of the Director General, Ms. Grootboom, the State Law Advisor, and Ms. Ibrahim, the Parliamentary Legal Advisor. With all of that being said, I wish to welcome all of you, honorable members and colleagues. The meeting of the Portfolio Committee is now in session. The first item that we, as flighted, were meant to discuss is the consideration and adoption of the National Flood and Fire Amendment Bill. As per previous meeting, we had resolved that we have for a very long time been discussing this item and we need to finalize it. We will then consider it and process it for consideration. And then for the second item will be the finalization of the commercial fishing rights and the conclusion of the small scale fishing rights allocation support programs. So basically our program is not really very long today. With that being said, can I get the mover of the agenda, the adoption of the agenda? Honorable Kancho.
Good morning, Chairperson. I would like to move for the adoption of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kancho. Can you get the seconder?
Second, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bryant. The agenda has then been adopted. Who is leading the consideration and the adoption of the National Flood and Fire Amendment Bill? I suspect it is Ms. Grootboom. Ms. Grootboom, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members and honorable Chairperson and all the colleagues. Chair, I'm going to try and start my video, but I'm in my office, so it may just break up a little.
Well, I know you.
Is it okay if I mute my video or stop my video?
Yeah, now that your face has been seen, particularly by Honorable Winkler, I think it's fine if you can switch it off.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, honorable members, as you will remember that the ALIS was agreed to, so there were certain changes that was made to the bill. So what I will do, I will just first indicate all the clauses to which changes were made. I will not go into detail on those changes. I will just indicate to where changes were made. And then after that, I will take the members through individually through each and every aspect of the bill where members will agree or not to it. So the changes that were made to the bill was to the cover page. There was changes made. There were changes made. A new clause was added. There was changes made to clause 2 of the bill. There was changes made to clause 3 of the bill. There was changes made to clause 5 of the bill. And then there was changes made to clause 7 of the bill. And then there was changes made to the long title of the bill. I think members are in possession of the A bill and would have seen those changes. But now moving forward, with regards to the cover page, does members agree to the contents hereof or not? It says National Veld and Forest Fire Amendment Bill as amended by the Portfolio Committee on Environment, Forestries and Fisheries in the National Assembly. The English text is the official text of the bill. It's introduced by the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, B24B of 2021.
Sorry, Chairperson.
Honorable Bryant.
Thank you. Chairperson, can I just make a proposal in terms of procedure, if possible, that instead of us waiting to raise issues and that, just if there is an objection to any section for a member then to raise that, and if not, then it's taken as agreed.
Okay, there's a proposal, honorable members. I think it is 9 pages. Not really to counter what Honorable Bryant is proposing. Perhaps we should take perhaps one page at a time instead of line by line, if we are in sync, Honorable Bryant.
Yes, Chairperson, as long as that's procedurally acceptable.
Okay, honorable members, your views. Honorable Weber.
I second that proposal, Chair. I think it will work faster and more thorough. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Grootboom, the committee resolves that we take it page by page instead of sentence by sentence.
That is in order, Chairperson. So is it okay that if I then indicate on each page the content and at least to say it contains the long title, clause 1 and part of clause 2? Is it fine if I address it in that way, just so that it is on the record?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So is there any objections on the cover page? Because that is the first page, Chair.
No objections, Chairperson. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Honorable Singh. Welcome. No objections on the cover page?
Thank you. I've been with you from the beginning.
Yeah, well, I welcomed everyone. I also noticed you. I was actually including you there. PT, I did not know you wanted to be recognized specially, but I understand, Honorable Singh. Thank you. Okay, let's proceed, Ms. Holgo.
Then on page two of the bill, we have the long title. We have clause 1 of the bill and we have clause 2 of the bill up until the definition of public entity. Does the members agree or not, or have any objections to this page?
Any objections on the first page, honorable members?
No from my side, Chairperson.
No objections, Chair, from our side.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
No objections. Thank you.
Then on page 3 of the bill, we have the clause 3, continuation of clause 2, which ends by the definition veld fire. Then we have clause 3 of the bill, clause 4 of the bill, clause 5 of the bill, and clause 6 of the bill. Does the members have any objection to this clause, to this page?
Sorry, Chair, can I say something?
Proceed, Honorable Weber.
Chair, it's something that's bugging me, so I just want confirmation from Honorable Grootboom on this. We call it the Veld Fire and Forestry Bill, but we've changed, like we've seen on this page now, that veld and forest or mountain is replaced by veld fire. So my question is just then, shouldn't it just be the veld fire bill, because we've changed everything? And I'm sorry, I'm jumping now back to the first page, but it's been bugging me. So I was waiting for this specifically. I hope that makes sense. Thanks.
Ms. Grootboom, the committee had resolved to amend the National Veld and Forest Fire Amendment Bill. What Honorable Weber is asking is, shouldn't the cover page then the heading be as amended?
Chairperson, I think we discussed this in one of the deliberations to indicate that what has been amended currently in the statute books, it is the Veld and Forest Fire Act. So, so this bill is amending the current Veld and Forest Fire Act. Hence the title National Veld and Forest Fire Amendment Bill. But what this bill is also doing, it is giving that act now a new title. So moving forward, if there's any amendment to the current act, which is now a new name, then that new amendment bill will be called the Veld Fire Amendment Bill. I'm not sure if that.
Are you persuaded, Honorable Weber?
I'm happy with that, Chair. If it has a new name, I will be very happy with it. Thank you.
Okay, let's proceed from page 3, Ms. Grootboom.
There was no objections, I think, on page 3 other than that, which was now clarified. So Chair, the current title of the bill will stay as it is, but should the act in the future be amended, then there will be another title to that future amendment bill. But this bill will retain this title. I hope that is understood.
Is it understood, honorable members? For purposes of amendment, the bill will remain with this title. But the new name, after it is then an act, it will be called with the new name. Is that what you are saying, Ms. Grootboom?
That's right, Chairperson.
100%.
Okay, page 4.
On page 4, there's clause 7, clause 8, clause 9, and clause 10. It ends with the short title and the commencement of the bill. Is there any objection to page 4?
No objection, Chairperson, from my side.
No objection, Chair.
No objection.
No objections. Can we proceed?
No
Thank you,
objection.
Chairperson. As is standard, Chairperson, we don't go through the memorandum on the objects of the bill, but I will just indicate that from page 5 to page 9, we have the memorandum of the objects of the bill. Chairperson, and if anyone is objecting to anything in there, they may raise it now.
Are there any objections to the memorandum on the objects of the bill, honorable members? From page 5 up to page 9.
Chairperson,
No,
I think they're
Honorable
moving a bit
Singh.
too fast, moving a bit too fast.
Who
Is
is
it-
scrolling? Can you please scroll slowly?
From which page, Chair?
From page 5 to 9, let's scroll slowly. What
Okay.
we'll do, we'll go to page 5 and ask members if they are comfortable. Then we'll go to 6 and then we'll go to 7. Page 5, honorable members. Okay, page 6. Page 7.
Chairperson,
Honorable Singh.
yeah, the Department of Environmental Affairs, do we leave it like that, or do we put the full proper registered, forestry fisheries, or is it sufficient to stay as just environmental affairs? And the Department of Energy, I think is it the Department of Mineral and Energies, or I'm just asking these questions so the legal advisors can just take us through. If they're satisfied, that's fine.
Ms. Grootboom.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not sure if the department is here, but I think at the time of consultation, these were the names of those particular departments. But I don't think it should make a big difference, because even with the amalgamation, the Department of Environmental Affairs is listed here, and then I see Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries also listed. Even though those departments merged, they were consulted. But at the time of consultation, these were the names of these departments or sub-departments.
Which consultations? Are you referring to the public hearings that we had?
these were remember this bill was introduced by the executive authority and they themselves had to conduct some type of consultations on the bill as well, Chairperson. So these were the entities that they also consulted. So I'm not sure if the department can shed more light on this. In principle, Chairperson, in principle, if any question is going to be asked whether stakeholders were consulted, then in substance they will it will be determined that all, regardless of the names of the departments, that everyone was consulted. So that isn't just the purpose of listing this in the memorandum, to make sure that everyone was consulted. But yeah.
Okay, are you fine with that, Honorable Singh?
Yeah, and I have no particular position on it, but just, if the department, I see the department is quite silent on it. So I take it when silence means consent. Thank you.
That's fine. Let's proceed. Let's proceed to page 8, Ms. Grootboom.
Chair,
But then there's a bulletin there of Ms. Grootboom. There's a bulletin there of lessees. Who are lessees?
But which bullet is that, Chairperson?
Number 9 from the bottom.
Lessees, it's people who lease. I assume so, Chairperson. The department can shed light on this, but I think I'm not sure if it's referred to lessees or if it's a particular entity's name called lessees. If the department can assist there.
I see the end of, who is Sbusiso Kobese? I think it's Sbusiso Kobese, I'll tell you now. The Director, Law Reform and Policy Coordination. Mr. Kobese?
No, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify the point about the names of the departments. The names, yes, indeed, they were put there in the bill during the initial public consultations on the bill. But then there's been a reconfiguration of government in the past few years, and some of the names of the departments have changed. Therefore, I think we would propose that maybe those names be updated to reflect the current names of those respective departments, including Minerals and Energy, our department, and others. So that's what would be our suggestion, Chair. Thank you.
DG?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to the honorable members. I think Spusiso, Mr. Kobose has clarified in relation to the list that is provided. And also just the lessees, Spusiso, possibly you would need also to provide more clarity because I think some of our plantations, we do have lessees as part of managing those plantations in that period of consultation. But I think our legal expert must provide a thorough interpretation for the record, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Zamini, followed by Honorable Bryant.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say, if probably we speak about lessees the way the Deputy Minister is explaining it, they are still part of the local communities. Now, once we make them as a stakeholder on their own, it might create some problems. Therefore, my suggestion would be, let's delete leases and leave them to be part of the local communities and public. Thank you.
Honorable Brian.
Thanks, Chairperson. Yeah, so I think what we need to establish is whether or not these are lessees of state-owned land. I assume that's more than likely what it's referring to, but I think if that is the case, then one should then stipulate that lessees of state-owned land or something along those lines, just to clarify it, because I do agree with you, it tends to be a little bit vague. What lessees is one referring to? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Brian. Who is Fatima Ibrahim?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm the Parliamentary Legal Advisor. Chairperson, my preference is if we please retain the names of the departments and the stakeholders as they appeared. Firstly, because those were the names of the department at the time during which the consultations occurred, as Ms. Grootboom has indicated. So where you have a merger of departments, it's not the merged department that was consulted. So you don't want to create that confusion later on. Also, Chair, in any event, the memorandum on the objects of the bill don't form part of the Act. They are just a supplementary document to assist. Thank you.
Mr. Kobese, I see your hand is back.
Yes, Chair, I wanted to clarify the point on the leases. To say leases are contemplated in the Act, they are provided for in the Act. In fact, if you look at the definition of the term owner, it includes leases as well. So that concept is provided for or in the Act within the definition of owner.
Well, my understanding of Honorable Bryant is that there is no problem with lessees, but we are not clear which lessees are this, owner of what. I think that is what we wanted clarity on. Can it be a bit explicit? That is what we were seeking clarity on. Because when you said lessees, it's just too open, it's just too vague. That is what we are seeking clarity on. You see, for example, if you say forestry companies, three bulletins up, you're saying forestry companies, and then you're making an example there. And you're saying, e.g., Safcol, Monzi, South African paper production industry. So on farmers, it's much clearer. You are referring to farm owners. But on lessees, who are these people? That is what we're talking about.
If I may, Chair, the leases would then include any person who owns land or who is in control of land, whether in terms of contract, a testamentary document, or specific legislation or a court order. So it carries its ordinary meaning to say you are a landowner, you are in control of the land, then you are able to then on that basis interact with the department.
I think it will give us problems because municipality can be a lessee too. The department can be a lessee, but that's fine. Honorable Singh.
Yeah, Chairperson, I really will help to just say various lessees as contemplated in the Act. If that would help. Because they contacted various lessees and the definition of lessees, as Busiso says, contemplated in the Act.
Okay, that's another proposal. DG.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not differing much. I think I would be in agreement with what Honorable Member and Busiso are proposing. But just to clarify, we have category A plantations where we have leases. So specifically, those are the ones that the Act also is referring to. But I think we need to align to the Act in line with what the legal official is proposing, which is aligned to member C. I'm fine. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, we really need to move. Are we amending that? Are we leaving it like that? Honorable Mbata?
Thank you, Chair. I think what Honorable Singh has proposed, it makes sense. Let's take it as our resolution to this issue. Thank you.
Honorable Singh?
No, Chair, I'm comfortable either way, but I see the proposal has been seconded by Honorable Mbata. So I don't know if the parliamentary legal advisors or Ms. Kurpon will have any challenge with including that lessees as contemplated in the Act.
Ms. Ibrahim and Ms. Boom, did you get that?
Chair, I have no objection to that. What's crucial is that the A list correctly reflects changes that are going to be made to the Act, which we are all in agreement is in order. So I'm neither here nor there as concerns these changes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Boom.
The same here, Chairperson. The crucial changes is those ones that's done to the Act itself. This concerns a memorandum. So if this is what the committee resolved, then it's in order, Chair.
Okay, we then resolve to amend it and put it in that context. So that we are clear. We don't go around asking if a person is not in this committee or in this meeting and they are reading this amendment bill, they should not look around. They should be clear on who exactly do we mean when we say local communities were consulted, the environmental consultant was consulted, the municipalities and so on. But it must also be clear who are these lessees. Ms. Ibrahim, I see your hand is up again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, may I please ask the committee if you are agreeing that we make those changes, that I also add one more point for clarity in the memo, and that would just be to explain the new amendment of Section 1, which, as you'll recall, Ms. Grootboom explained that we removed veld forests and mountain fires, and we just called it veld fires throughout the Republic, and that had to do with the long title. So we would just explain that as well for the purpose that you explained, Chair, that somebody reading the bill afterwards understands all the amendments that are made. Thank you.
I think there's consensus, Ms. Ibrahim. That part of lessees and that part of mountain fires should be clearly explicit so that the next reader of this amendment should understand where we were coming from. Are we agreed, honorable members?
Agreed.
Yes,
Agreed,
Chairperson.
Chairperson.
Agreed, Chairperson.
Great, thank you very much. Can we move to the implications for the department, page 7 and 8? Any clarities on page 8? Ms. Groot Boom and Ms. Ibrahim, I see at the top there on the implications for the provincial government. Chileka, can I request that you flight it again? But I have my own copy, but so that members are reading from the same page. In our consultations, public consultations, there were issues that related to cross-border fires, and it came across very strong from the Northwest. And I part of the issues they raised were that they were not deriving joy, even if they were registering their dissatisfaction with the provincial government of the Northwest. I think the same is applicable in the Northwest. So when we say there are no implications for the provincial government, what do we mean there? Ms. Grootboom?
Thank you, Chairperson. Generally, Chairperson, the memorandums, when it speaks about implications, yeah, it includes any implication that will attract financial, liabilities. But I hear what Chairperson is saying here. At the time, the department did not see any implications for the provinces. I'm not sure whether from a policy perspective, if this will now be something that will be, the department will have to look out for in the implementation of the bill itself, Chairperson. Once it becomes an act, that it's necessary to be mentioned in the memorandum, that it's something that will affect the provinces. So the department will have to apply its mind whether indeed cross-border fires will be something that has to be managed moving forward and actually affects the provinces.
Okay, Ms. Ibrahim?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. So typically implications would mean whether there are any financial implications for a particular organ of state, or in this case for the provincial government, or whether there would be any implications in terms of them having to pass any of their own legislation in order to comply with the Act. And as I understand it now, there are no such implications. That's not to say that they don't have a role to ensure that there is implementation. They can do that from an oversight perspective. But the department can correct me if I'm wrong. There is nothing that's going to be required from provincial government in terms of this, these amendments as it now stands.
Honorable members, are we still together?
Yes, Chair.
All right. Okay, that's the clarity on the implications for the provincial government. We just hope once it is an act and it's binding on all of us, the provincial government will then want to exonerate itself. But let's proceed.
Chair, I can't hear anything. Is there a sound issue?
No. We were just checking. I think members were still
Ah.
perusing. Brian, you're still in the meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, can we go to page 9 now? Right, the last page. Okay, are we home and dry, honorable members? From the department and Ms. Groot-Boom and Ms. Ibrahim, just on the amendments, I don't see, unless I did not read thoroughly, I do not see anywhere where it speaks about the offenses. And I think that is one point that we have hammered very much, where it speaks about the offenses. Are you able to take us to that section? The offenses and penalties. Is there such a thing?
Chairperson, the Principal Act does deal with penalties and offences in Chapter 7, and that would be sections 24 and 25. But there has been no proposed changes to those sections in this process, as far as I'm aware, which is why there's nothing captured on the A list.
What does the Principal Act say, Ms. Ibrahim? Because I know for a fact, I might not have my notes here, but I know for a fact that there were proposals that relates to the offenses and penalties. Okay, can you please read it out?
So, Chairperson, it's quite long, but what may have happened was that last year we advised that if there are going to be changes to sections of the Act that were not in the original bill as tabled, then that would require permission of the National Assembly. Because in terms of the rules, you can only inquire or make further amendments to sections that are already going to be amended in terms of a bill. So in other words, if your bill is amending section 1, 2, and 3, for example, of a Principal Act, and then following public participation, a committee would also like to change section 6, 7, and 8 of that Act, you would have to go back to the National Assembly to seek approval to do that, because those sections were not dealt with in the original bill. So that advice was given last year, Chair. As I understood it, the instruction was then that we would only seek to make amendments to those sections of the bill that had already been referred to in the bill.
Chair?
Honorable Weber?
I hear what she says and I understand the predicament and everything, but shouldn't we, while we're busy with it, complete it thoroughly as we have done with our public participation and include everything as seen and as we received it? Otherwise we have to start again and now we have to do this and then we do this again. I'm not sure. I'm just wondering about this. Sorry.
I'm not sure if the membership of the committee is exactly the same as it was last year, if there have been substantial changes, but if my memory serves me correctly, we were requested to do a formal legal opinion on this issue, which we did do, and I trust that it was distributed to members. So in terms of that process, apart from getting permission, it would then be necessary, depending on the nature of the changes, to reopen public participation. So I think that that is perhaps where the glitch was. But certainly if members are of the view that these issues that were raised should be covered in this process now, then that can be done. But as indicated, we would then need to seek the permission of the NA. We would have to look at what the nature of those changes are and then advise what format the public participation is that should follow, whether it can be limited and targeted. So for example, we go back only to people we know contributed to the discussions on this matter, or if it affects a particular segment of society, we then target it that way. And then whether we do it virtually, whether we hold physical hearings and so on. But that is the process to be followed. And that advice was given last year as to what would need to be done if the committee would want to broaden the scope of the bill or the ambit of the bill. Thank you.
Honorable Bryant.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I fully understand the sentiments of members about wanting to amend the legislation further. My only concern would be that, we have already gone through quite an extensive process of public hearings and public participation, and we have also previously gone through this bill in the committee and had opportunities to make input. So my only concern would be now doing these amendments at a later stage and potentially the impact that could have on getting this legislation passed, these amendments that are quite important, especially considering we are about a year's away from the end of this term of office. So I would likely suggest that that we work with what we currently have, but it's the opinion of the rest of the committee as to how to take that forward. But my sentiment would be that we continue with the amendments that we are currently working on. Thanks.
Ms. Ibrahim, do you have that the principal act there? Perhaps we might not really need to reopen the process. Can you just take us through that if you have it with you? I'm sure it might be very helpful.
Okay, I can do that.
Yes.
Section 24, as I said, this is all contained in Chapter 7 that deals specifically with offences and penalties. Section 24 reads penalties. Subsection 1. A person who is guilty of a first category offence referred to in Section 25 may be sentenced on a first conviction for that offence to a fine or imprisonment for a period of up to 2 years, or to both a fine and such imprisonment. Subsection 2. A person who is guilty of a second category offence referred to in Section 25 may be sentenced on a first conviction for that offence to a fine or imprisonment for a period of up to 1 year, or to both a fine and such imprisonment. Subsection 3. A person who is guilty of a third category offence referred to in Section 25 may be sentenced on a first conviction for that offence to a fine or community service for a period of up to 6 months, or both a fine and such service. Subsection 4. A person who is guilty of a second or third category offence may be sentenced on a second conviction for that offence, as if he or she has committed a first or second category offence, respectively. Subsection 5. A court which sentences any person to community service for an offence in terms of this Act must impose a form of community service which benefits the environment, if it is possible for the offender to serve such a sentence in these circumstances. Moving to Section 25, offences, subsection 1. Any person who lights, uses, or maintains a fire in the open air in contravention of section 10.2 is guilty of a first category offence. Subsection 2, any person who in the open air, A, leaves unattended a fire which he or she lit, used or maintained before that fire is extinguished. B, lights, uses or maintains a fire, whether with or without permission of the owner, which spreads and causes injury or damage. C, throws, puts down or drops a burning match or other burning material or any material capable of spontaneous combustion or self-ignition, and by doing so makes a fire which spreads and causes injury or damage. D, lights, uses or maintains a fire in a road reserve other than in a fireplace which has been designated by a competent authority or for the purposes other than the burning of a firebreak in terms of section 12 to 16, or smokes where smoking is by notice prohibited, is guilty of a second category offence. Subsection 3, any person who fails to prepare a firebreak when obliged to do so in terms of section 12(1) or 14, any person who fails to give notice of intention to burn a firebreak in terms of section 12(2)(b), and any person who burns a firebreak when a fire protection association has objected in terms of section 12(4)(a), or fails to inform adjoining owners of the matters referred to in section 12(5), is guilty of a second category offence. Then subsection 4, any person who fails to meet the standards of readiness for firefighting referred to in section 17(1), any person who fails to notify the persons referred to in section 18(1)(a), any person who refuses to assist a fire protection officer or a forest officer in terms of section 18(3)(b) or 18(4)(b), or any person who hinders or obstructs any person referred to in section 18(2), or any fire protection officer referred to in section 18(3), or any forest officer referred to in section 18(4), is guilty of a second category offence. Subsection 5, any owner, occupier, or person in control of land on which a fire occurs who fails to take reasonable steps to extinguish the fire or to confine it to that land or to prevent it from causing damage to property or adjoining land is guilty of a first category offence. Subsection 6, any person who prevents a fire protection officer, a forest officer, a police officer, or an officer appointed in terms of section 5 or 6 of the Fire Brigade Services Act from acting in terms of section 27, 28, or 29, or in any way interferes with him or her in the performance of his or her duties in terms of section 27, 28, or 29, is guilty of a third category offence. And then the last subsection, Chair, negligence amounts to fault for the purposes of an offence in terms of that section. And that, Chair, concludes the section dealing with offences and penalties. So it is quite long, Chair, as you can see.
Yeah, but I think, thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim. I think it's much clearer. So I think we stand by our conviction that we really do not really want to reopen the public consultations. Honorable Paulsen.
Thank you very much, Chair. I concur with you, Chair, and with the rest who feel that we should go ahead. I just want to know what would be the impact of us not reopening the hearings and accommodating those who have a different view on changing what we've already decided upon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Paulsen. Did you capture the question, Ms. Grootboom and Ms. Ibrahim?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Chair, as part of public participation, when Parliament embarks on a public participation process, it must apply whatever comes out of that process in a rational manner. So apply its mind to what communities have said and then to see whether it's in agreement or not agreement in respect of proposed changes. And of course, when we embark on public participation, it's very seldom that everybody's in agreement as to what needs to be changed and the manner in which it needs to be changed. So as long as the committee is satisfied that following the public participation process, it has made the changes that it feels is necessary. And as I said, ordinarily the changes would be confined to what is contained in the bill that was originally tabled, then that would be fine. Also, Chair, we have had some discussions with the department, myself and the state law advisor on some of these issues and the processes. And as I understood it at the time, there was a concern that some of these changes or amendments are quite urgent and they wanted it to be implemented as soon as possible. The nature of legislation, Chair, is that what's on paper is sometimes quite different to what happens from a practical perspective, and lessons are learned once legislation is enacted, and nothing prevents the department or the committee acting on its own accord in time to come to introduce another bill to make changes if they so wish. However, if any changes want to be made at this point, then there is a legal process to be followed as indicated. I don't know if the department perhaps wants to add their views, Chair, because they would have, of course, followed the public participation process closely, and they also presented to the committee last year in terms of the proposals made by the public during that process and what their responses were. Thank you.
Mr. Gininza.
Yes, Chair. I don't know whether I'm audible, but it was the Chair.
Yes, you are.
All right. Yeah. It was the committee's decision to follow. Actually, it boiled down to two choices. Consider all the input that came from the public in terms of the clauses. We have a long report that was considered. And due to the nature of the comments that came from the public participation process, the view of the committee was that those inputs can be accommodated in another process, which some of those inputs could be considered in the regulations or in another amendment. I do remember there were complaints or issues around the sanctions relating to the cost from fires that were deliberately or negligently caused. But yeah, that part was to be shelved, or the committee resolved that it will be shelved and will be considered some other time. So yeah, I think maybe a discussion that can unfold will be around those issues considered in the regulations, those ones that the committee feels strongly about.
Honorable Chrissy.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to you and to members of the committee. And Chair, allow me to extend my condolences to you for the loss of your mother. Chair, I would really want to just reiterate the point that you have made with regard to new amendments to this bill. I think that we would not have objections to the committee suggesting to us that we begin a second amendment process. But given the extensive nature of amendment processes that require cabinet concurrence and many other processes that the department itself would have to go through, were there to be amendments proposed that are not we're not considered in the first iteration, it would really delay the current bill. And we would really appeal to you. We need these amendments very urgently. It's been a very long time since this bill was amended. And we would plead with you, can we pass these amendments? And then if the committee would want to suggest a further process, we would be very open to cooperating with the committee further as time moves on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much. Honorable members, I think Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And greetings, Minister. I tend to agree with the Minister on that. I think let's do what we have to do. And if regulations, as I read in our report, can accommodate some of the concerns we have, let it be. Otherwise, I'm sure we can engage in another process. But I think we've got to get some amendments on the table so that, we can prevent some of the disasters, etc., that have been happening. So I would support us accepting the proposals as it stands at the moment, on the basis that we do consider with the department additional proposals as we move forward, and we also peruse the regulations quite closely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. Honorable members, I think that is how we should resolve. I'm happy that the department is led by the minister is affirming that they are open to further engagements should they arise and further amendments to this bill, that we should adopt these amendments of the National Field and Forest Fire Amendment Bill as is for now. Should the need arises, relating to some of the issues that we have raised, the department will be open to cooperate with us or with the committee to further include some of those amendments as per regulations. Are we in agreement? If we are, can we then move? Can we get a mover for the adoption and the seconder?
Chair, I'll move for adoption.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh.
I'll second, Chair. It's Ganjo.
Honorable Ganjo will second. Honorable members, that means that the report as is has been, the bill as is has been considered by the committee, and the A list has been adopted. Can we then move to the next item? The next item is the briefing on the finalization of commercial fishing rights allocation and the conclusion of the small-scale fishing rights allocation and support programs. Can I then invite Minister Chrissy to give an overview? Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Sorry, Chair, we need to consider the report as well. I'm not sure if it's showing on my screen.
Is the different? Oh, yes. Okay. I apologize, Honorable Minister. Just page. I thought it's, oh, this and that. The first page, Honorable members, of the report of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, the National Field and Forest Amendment Bill. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Honorable members, I think this is what we also dealt with last week in our previous meeting. Yes. Can we get this, the mover and the seconder of the report? Honorable Singh.
Yeah, Chairperson, I'd just like to know from the legal advisors, is there anything in this report that might require some tweaking arising from the discussions that we had earlier on? Is there any particular thing that might require some tweaking, because we were talking about, you know, the titles, etc., etc., etc.? If the answer is no.
Yeah, no.
Person, I don't think it's necessary. Because as I indicated, the changes that are being requested is to the memorandum that doesn't form part of the bill, and it is captured, it will be captured in the minutes. However, if you would like us to add something, we can definitely assist the committee secretary to do so.
Chair, that is, I move for adoption.
No, Chair, it won't be necessary, as that concerns the memorandum at this stage.
Chair.
Who's that? Honorable Ganjo.
Thank you, Chair. I've raised my hand.
Yes, proceed, ma'am.
Okay, Chair. I think it will also assist if the report can include the decision that we have made, that the comments received from public participation will be incorporated in other separate process. I think that needs to also to be added, Chair. That will include the consideration to the regulations to that effect.
Yeah, well, I think that's the summary we made, Honorable Ganjo. I agree with you. Honorable members, you would agree with me, some of the, in other provinces where we went, there are people who were really uncomfortable, who expressed high levels of discomfort, that these consultations were just tick boxes. And some of them made critical and valuable inputs, but we're worried that those inputs will not be considered in the final analysis and approval of this bill and act. So we don't want to come across as people who are just ticking the boxes. And perhaps it is an eye-opener too, so that when we start the new consultative process this weekend for the climate change bill, we must have thoroughly scrutinized what if we are going to agree with the recommendations made by the department insofar as the amendment of the particular bill or its introduction is concerned. But we note that, Honorable Ganjo, and I think that is our resolve. Honorable Singh has moved for the adoption of the report. I have not heard anyone on record moving for seconding. Honorable Mbata.
Chair, I support the move by Honorable Singh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mbata. We then move to the next item. Honorable Minister Chrissy, I had already introduced you, unless you want me to read these 10-page credentials.
Thank you very much, Honorable Modise. I think We are all familiar with each other on this platform. Honorable Modise, I think members are very well aware that we conducted the fishing rights allocation process during the previous year, and that we have now begun the appeals process. And I think honorable members are also aware that I am the appeals authority in this process. And we will update you as to where we are in the appeals process. And of course, all appeals decisions are published publicly. Now, honorable members, I will not be commenting on the FRAP process at all, because as you know, the appeals continue, and many of the questions that honorable members would want to ask would be the subject of the appeals. And I don't want to compromise my role in that regard. So we've been through this before, and I think everybody is clear about those issues. With regard to small scale, as you know, we had appealed some time ago to the courts to set aside the small scale allocation in the Western Cape. We have now embarked on the process of the reallocation of those rights. It's been quite a bumpy ride, partly because many of those from whom we would have wanted inputs would have been at sea, and so on and so forth. But we will now tell you where we are on the verification process and what the process is from that particular point. Having made that introduction, I'm assuming that DDG Middleton is here, and that she would be taking responsibility for the presentation on the FRAP process, and that maybe it would be Mr. Ngongwa who would be taking us through the small scale process. So allow me to hand over to the relevant officials. Thank you very much. But by the way, I don't see our Deputy Minister online, but if she is, let me send her warm greetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. We have received an apology. She's struggling, the Deputy Minister, she's struggling with connection. Hopefully she will join as the meeting proceeds. Thanks, Minister. Ms. Middleton. Oh, she's here.
I'm using my official's gadget because mine just decided to throw me out of the system. I'm using NOMSA's gadget. I am here.
Oh, no. Greetings to you and welcome, Deputy Minister. We don't look for photos, we look for names, Deputy Minister. Okay, Ms. Middleton, let's proceed.
Good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, Honourable Minister, Honourable DM and colleagues. I'm just putting on my camera to show you that I am indeed in the meeting. I'll turn it off when I do the presentation, but allow me to extend my best wishes to everybody in the meeting for 2023. I'm going to be taking you through the update on the FRAP process. If we can move to slide 2. This is just the 2 areas that the presentation covers. That's the background, and then an update on the milestones where we are at the moment. So if you can go to slide 3. The last time we presented an update to the Portfolio Committee on FRAC was on the 31st of August, 2021. And at that time, we were busy with conducting the socioeconomic impact assessments, or the SAIAs. And we reported to the Portfolio Committee that we were commencing the process of allocating commercial fishing rights in terms of Section 18 of the Marine Living Resources Act of 1998 in the following sectors: KZN prawn trawl, demersal shark, tuna pole line, traditional linefish, squid, small pelagics, which includes both pilchards and anchovies, hake deep sea trawl, hake longline, and South Coast rock lobster. Next slide. We also reported that we had identified 8 key reporting milestones. And I need to immediately apologize if you see the numbers, there are only 7, but I'll talk to that. So the first one was on the appointment of service providers, various service providers to assist us with the FRAC process. The second one was to announce a resource split or a apportionment split for those sectors where rights were being allocated to both small scale and commercial, or those sectors that qualify as both commercial and small scale. The third one was to review and finalize the policies, which included the general policy on the allocation of fishing rights, the transfer policy. There were 9 sector-specific policies, the fish processing establishment policy, as well as reviewing and consulting on the application form and the fees for the FRAC process. The fourth milestone or phase was to open the application process. The fifth one was to do the adjudications and the announcements. The sixth one was to open the appeals process, and there's where a typo comes in. The seventh one is where we currently are at the moment, and that is to consider the appeals. And the eighth one is an update on the rights holder information, as well as the sector transformation profiles. So you'll see then that we currently considering the appeals. If we can go to the next slide. So obviously we completed the first phase, which was to appoint the service providers. The second one was to announce the apportionment splits. And there were 2 fisheries where rights would be allocated to both small scale and commercial, and those were squid and the traditional linefish sector. In the squid sector, we received a court application to review the proposed sector's apportionment in squid, which was dismissed by the minister. And so the decision is that up to 25%, or graduating up to 25% of the total allowable effort in the squid sector will go to commercial, and will go to small scale, and 75% will go to commercial. And then in the traditional linefish sector, the proposal is a 50-50 split, subject to further socioeconomic studies in the sector. In terms of the review, which was the third milestone of the various policies, application forms, and fees, the presidency approved the 9 socioeconomic impact assessments, both phase 1 and phase 2. We reviewed and approved the general policy, as well as the 9 sector-specific policies. And all the policies were translated into the 3 coastal languages. And public consultations on these policies, application forms, and fees took place during October 2021. We held 44 sessions in terms of physical meetings, and we also had 6 virtual sessions. The application forms were approved, both for entities. Most of the sectors you had to apply as an entity, with the exception of the traditional lionfish sector, where you applied as an individual. And we consulted on the applicable application fees, and Minister took a decision that we would not increase the application fees from the 2015 level. And she also further granted an exemption to the traditional lionfish sector, whereby they were exempted from paying an application fee. The 2 policies that we did not finalize were the transfer policy and the fish processing establishment policy. They will be reviewed in the next financial year. And the reason for that was that they are general policies and were not specific to the 9 sectors that we were allocating. Next slide. The 4th phase was to call for applications. There was, for the first time, an online application system that was developed both for the applications as well as the appeals process. We opened the online application process on the 1st of November 2021, whereby people were able to register their intention to apply. We set up 10 decentralized support systems around the country, and we had a 24-hour help desk, both telephonic and email. There was a FRAP help desk and an IT help desk. We also had an independent and toll-free anonymous tip-off line, and that tip-off line is still operational, and we are still receiving some tip-offs, which will be subjected to forensic investigations. And an independent company was appointed to observe the entire process. And they have since given us a report stating that the process was free and fair. On the 27th to the 7th of December, phase 2 of the application process commenced, whereby people could start uploading their completed application forms. And we granted 2 extensions to the application process from the 7th to the 10th of December, and then a further one for the entire month of January 2022 to allow applicants more time to complete and upload additional and supporting documentation. If we can move to the next slide. Phase 5 of the FRAP process entailed the adjudication and the actual announcements and allocations. And the assessments took place during February of 2022. It was a very intense period where we had 8 appointed delegated authorities and 6 assessment teams to assist the 8 delegated authorities. And those assessment teams consisted of technical experts in areas of science, resource management, compliance, as well as legal support. And during the time of the assessments, we were also in a COVID period. All of the assessments were done observing quite strict COVID protocols, which didn't make the job any easier. And at the end of the application process, we had received 2,473 applications across the 9 fisheries. Next slide. In terms of, this is step 5 or phase 5 continued. In terms of the actual decision-making process, the delegated authorities and the technical teams started by considering exclusionary criteria. So any application that was improperly lodged, in other words, was late or incomplete, or was materially defective, or didn't comply with the requirements were automatically excluded. The next phase or next step in the deliberations was to, per sector, consider balancing criteria based on the sector-specific policies, which included how many category A's, B's, and C's. And just to explain there, a category A applicant in a fishery was an applicant that had previously been successful in the previous round. A category B applicant was an applicant that did not hold fishing rights previously in the sector for which they were now applying, but did hold fishing rights in other sectors. And a category C applicant was somebody who was completely new to the fishing sector, had never held a fishing right in any fishery. And category A's were evaluated against category A's, B's against B's, and C's against C's. And some of the criteria that were used were multi-sector involvement in order to improve on economies of scale, fishing experience and knowledge, investment in the sector, which was considered to be quite important, the extent to which an applicant was dependent or reliant on that fishery for their livelihood, compliance, access to a suitable vessel, their past performance, their transformation profiles, and also their ability to create jobs and employment. Next slide. The next step in the allocation process was then to consider against the background of the total allowable catch, so how much fish was available in a fishery or how many vessels could be allowed in. Decisions had to be taken about how many category A's could be allowed, how many B's and how many C's. The final lists with the reasons for the decisions were published on the 28th of February 2022 in what is known as the GPR, the General Published Reason. And in my capacity as the DDG, I granted all the successful applicants an exemption until the 30th of April that they could immediately go fishing without having a permit. And during March and April, they had to apply and get their new permits and to pay their levies and their grant of right fees. And during that period, the previous people who were now unsuccessful were given a month to get their vessels back to port. Grant of right letters and score sheets were published on the 24th of March 2022, and we conducted forensic investigations into any tip-offs that we had received. Next slide. This is just a summary, and I won't go through each of it, but in total, we received 2,473 applications. There were 710 successful applications, 947 unsuccessful, 802 excluded applications across the various fisheries, and 4 reserve decisions in the Hague longline sector, which have now been made public. Next slide. In terms of transformation, black percentage shareholding of the TAC or the TAE stands at 88.76%. Female shareholding is at 56%. Youth shareholding is 19.84%, and disabled persons is 2.5% of the effort or TAC. Next slide is just capturing what was in that table. The only outlier about female ownership is in the demersal shark fishery, where there is one rights holder who was successful, and that person is a female. So that could potentially skew the female ownership figures a little bit. And it must be stressed that these figures could change subject to the finalization of appeals. Should people become successful on appeal, it will change the figures slightly. Next slide. This is just a summary that across the 9 sectors, there were 710 successful applicants. 471 were previous rights holders in those fisheries. 78 were new entrants, category B entrants, who came into the fishery from another fishery. And then a total of 161 were totally new applicants, which gives you a percentage of 33.6% being new entrants. Next slide is on appeals. I'll cover this, this slide, and then I will hand over to my colleagues in legal to just take us through where we are with the appeals process. So in terms of stage 6 milestone, which was to open the appeals process. The appeals process opened online again on the 29th of March for a 30-day period, and it closed on the 29th of March 2022. Again, during that month of appeals, we reopened the 9 support centers around the country. We reopened the help desks, including telephones and emails, the FRAP help desk and the IT help desk. The anonymous tip-off line ran during that period. The independent observer observed the online application process, as well as the submission of appeals at the decentralized centers. And we, during this period, had to process a number of PIA requests, access to information requests. I think we've never received as many applications during the appeals process as previously. And Minister approved an extension of the appeals process until the 29th of May to allow more people time to submit their appeals. And then the delegated authorities had to compile what are known as Regulation 5.3 reports for the Minister and the legal team, and those were completed by the 22nd of June. If I could now hand over to Advocate Patel, who will take us through slide 15, which is where we are at the moment, stage 7 of the 8-step process.
Good morning, honourable members and colleagues. The appeals process had commenced at the end of last year. The Directorate Litigation and Appeals received 1,213 appeals across the 9 fishing sectors via the department's online appeal system. The appeals are being administered on a sector-by-sector basis in phases. These take into consideration the number of appeals per sector and the fishing seasons as follows. In phase 1, the demersal shark sector, the KwaZulu-Natal crustacean trawl sector, and miscellaneous issues arising from non-compliant and late appeals were dealt with. Phase 2 relates to the South Coast rock lobster sector and the traditional linefish sector. Phase 3 relates to the tuna pole line and squid sectors. And phase 4 relates to the hake sea deep trawl and hake longline sector. And phase 5 relates to the small pelagic sector made up of sardines and anchovies. Next slide, please. The appeals progress as at 25 January 2023, Minister Creasy completed phase 1 of the appeal process and is now steeped in phase 2 of the appeal process. The department is endeavoring to complete phase 2 of the appeal process relating to South Coast rock lobster and traditional lionfish by the end of February 2023. The Appeals Directorate has also commenced with the processing and administration of appeals in phase 3 of the process. The department will on an ongoing basis publish its progress in relation to each phase of the appeals process on its website. The department is endeavoring to complete the entire appeal process before the end of October 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. And then if we could go to the last slide, which is slide 17. This is just to report that this is phase 8 or step 8 in the allocation process. This is routine administration work, which is has been completed as far and will be finalized once the appeals are finalized. So that includes updating the rights holder register and updating the sector transformation profiles. And then we're doing routine work in ensuring that all successful applicants before they go fishing have paid their grant of right fee and are up to date with the payment of levies. We are conducting ongoing management and scientific working group meetings. All rights holders are submitting their catch data forms, which are analyzed on a monthly basis. Section 28 proceedings have commenced against those applicants where we have reason to believe that they have transgressed or have provided us with false information. Section 28 really refers to the fact that we can cancel or revoke a right. And then section 21, in terms of the transfer policy, is dealing with the transfer of rights or change in shareholding. And that refers to the other fishing sectors, not the FRAP sectors, because you cannot do a rights transfer within the first 2 years of being granted the right. And Honourable Chair, that brings us to the end of the update on the FRAP allocation process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Paulsen, I see your hand. Is it Legacy?
No, Chair, it's a new hand.
Okay, you'll be followed by Honourable Brian.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Middleton. I think, my honest opinion, and I can present evidence of this, I think a FAP process is a complete failure and has once again failed fishermen in this country. You have excluded people, and I've got evidence of it. I can present to you where a person's application is rejected because she didn't make payment, yet she proves to me that she's got a receipt of sending payment. So her application isn't considered, she loses the application fee, 11,000 Rand. Or whatever. She applied for three sectors, and all of them various. So obviously, I sat with her as she made the application. So when you apply for another species, you just use the same thing. So they accept certain documents for the one application, then it says it's absent for the other application. So your system is fraught with errors. And this process should be overturned. This would be used as evidence. No court would even consider that this process has been legitimate and fair, even if one person is prejudiced for errors on your side. So I don't think that you've even considered those appeals, because I've asked this person, did you get a response? No response. In fact, I think you've already decided beforehand as to which applications you will accept. And I do think that this FRAP process is a scam of the department, that people should go to jail for what they've done here. And this department is the one department where everyone involved should just be fired.
for denying our people access to the ocean. And I've got that evidence. I can present it to you if you're going to question it. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Paulsen. Honorable Bryant.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, and thank you to Ms. Middleton and her colleagues for the presentation. Let me just say, starting off from the outset, it has been very difficult talking to people who approach us as parliamentarians, who are sitting in a situation, some of them who haven't been able to fish in the way that they have fished for generations, for over a year now. And I spoke to a chap just recently who's had to close his factory down, small factory that he started. He is a 5th generation fisherman, and all the people in that factory are now unemployed. He is still waiting on his appeal to be processed. And this isn't politicking. This is the honest truth of the situation. These are people who are desperate, who have been failed by this process. And it's very clear that not enough has been done to reach out to them, to assist them, and to recognize the fact that they have been incredibly hard done by, especially those who come from traditional fishing communities, who only know fishing, who've grown up with their hands in the water, and now are unable to continue doing that. I know the Minister can't comment on appeals, but this is a question maybe to Ms. Middleton on one of the processes that has been completed, which is the KZN prawn trawl. And from what I understand, and you know, we all appreciate the need for transformation in the sector, 100%. But it appears that a decision has been taken there in a sector which isn't renowned for being very profitable, to not look favorably on the scores of an applicant who had extremely high scores, top scores, and to bring in somebody who'd scored significantly lower. The individual who was unsuccessful, or the group that was unsuccessful, was also employing around about 500 people in a factory, which is now going to have to shut, and those ships are going to have to go back to dock. The concern, and I think it's a legitimate concern, is that the applicant who's been awarded these rights may not be able to fulfill the obligations or be as effective as the previous holder. And this will in turn effectively decimate that particular industry. I know it's a difficult question to answer, but these are the hard questions that we are getting asked as parliamentarians, to say, how can you sit by and watch these industries slowly being destroyed? And specifically for individuals who are not part of the big conglomerates, but who have been traditional fishermen, fisherfolk, and individuals who have invested in local communities to grow and develop jobs, now effectively being left by the wayside. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Paulsen. Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I just want to also align myself with the comments and the concerns expressed by my two colleagues. And just to say that we need to, as a portfolio committee, ensure that we are the voice of the people, and that also ensure that the processes that are involved are completely credible. And I trust that Ms. Middleton will give us some kind of an assurance in that regard. And if not, if unable to, then take us into confidence as we move forward onto what corrections or changes need to be made to mitigate all these risks and factors that are coming from communities. But my specific question, Chair, would be, we always read about this commercial fishing rights process, and one of the concerns has always been fronting. Now, Ms. Middleton has given us figures of blacks and females and et cetera, What kind of independent audit is being carried out to prevent fronting? Because the information we get, it is still the large companies of the past that are manipulating systems and causing fronting to happen, and they get licenses granted to them. So we just need some kind of comfort in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable C. Are there further takers, honorable members? Further takers on this
Honorable
issue?
Weber.
Honorable Weber and Honorable Kanjo.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, what I want to ask is, I understand the department is really trying to do this as thorough and as fair as possible. My question is just that while they're waiting for a license or for an appeal or anything, this is their livelihood. They cannot fish, they cannot do anything. And if this continues for 8 or 9 or 10 months, where is these people getting the resources from to do what they have been doing all along, and how will they feed their children and let them go to school? So in the process, what is happening with these people while they're waiting for everything? And so that is my one question. My other question is, I seen they went online, and I understand that. My question is it only online now, or can people still do manual? Because not everyone has the resources to go online and do this, and will not be able to receive an online email message rather than an SMS for applications and everything. And I know we have to move forward technologically, but it is not in this country's fit, if you want to call it that. Everyone has access to those resources. So is there a manual process still in place side by side with the online process, and how do you deal with that or not? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Weber. Honorable Kanjo.
Thank you, Chairperson. And let me also thank the presentation. Honorable Singh has covered me on the issue of fronting, Honorable Chairperson. There seems to be a lot of it when it comes to this fishing industry. I have only one question, Chair. What were the transformation stats on slide 11 before FREP 2020? If they can tell us, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Kanjo. Honorable C, then Honorable Winkler.
Yes, so sorry, Chair. I take it that the presentation on the small-scale fishing rights will be done after this, or we may have to consider what we are going to do, seeing that we are constrained for time for circumstances that we are aware of. So I haven't referred to anything about subsistence and small scale, in the hope that we are going to deal with that aspect a little later. But perhaps we must also look at our time now as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Winkler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Ms. Middleton. It is with some trepidation and concern that I broach this issue, because I was last on this portfolio committee about 2 years ago, and it seems that we're rehashing the same issues from 2 years in the making. So it feels that the type of feedback that one receives, perhaps from the industry, from communities, from the portfolio committee, they aren't being internalized and adopted and implemented in a way that can streamline this process, so that we don't have these recurrent issues with appeals and litigation and charges of exclusion. It's highly problematic, and we know that every time that it comes to this FRAP process, the same sort of issues crop up. So I wonder if there's not a way that we can actually determine how inputs from the committee and from stakeholder participation are then implemented by the department. For example, if there is a manual process accompanied by an electronic process for applications, and there's been many a concern about the accessibility of communities to the electronic process, for instance, or what kind of assistance they are receiving with the manual process. And we have come up with perhaps troubleshooting suggestions or solutions, and then to actually have those implemented rather than just suggesting the same thing repeatedly and not seeing those things actually implemented. So perhaps some sort of way to, I don't know, reference what we're doing and if these things are being included in the FRAP process going forward. Thank you.
Minister, you want to, I see you switched your camera on. You want to come in first before Ms. Middleton? Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, let me say the following on the appeals process. First of all, the reason that you have an appeals process is to correct errors in the initial process. And what I want to share with the committee is that when we enter into the appeals process, we do a de novo, in other words, a new scoring of every person who appeals. And we look at everything that they raise in their appeals. So if they say they have submitted documents and where they have submitted documents, we look for those documents. When they say that we have underscored them on this and that criteria for whatever reasons, we look at that process. What I understand, both from the inputs that have been made repeatedly in this portfolio committee, but also from the inputs that have been made to us from members of the public, that lionfish is one of the most vexed sectors with regard to the allocations. And it is for this reason that I have instructed my team that this sector must be dealt with in what we're calling phase 2, because what we understand is that this is where there is significant community hardship. What I can't promise is that those who have been excluded will be reallocated their rights. But what I can promise is that every single appeal is looked at in individuality. It's not a bulk process. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is that throughout the fisheries sector, the resource, in other words, the fish. Sorry, Chair, are you calling me?
I apologize, Minister, please proceed.
So the resource, in other words, the fish, that the resource is under stress, both as a result of historical fishing practices and as a result of natural phenomena such as climate change and its impact on ocean currents and fish migration. And the consequence of that is that if we want to continue with the transformation process, which we do want to continue with, we can't bring in new players unless we reduce the quotas for those who have historically been in the sector, because there are no more fish to allocate. So that, I think, is a real issue that colleagues need to take into account. So the committee, if the committee supports transformation, then we can't also have complaints that historical players receive a reduced allocation. So those are just the two broad points I want to make. But I do want to give assurances to committee members that I'm very concerned about the lionfish sector. It is why I am dealing with it currently. And we are doing everything we can to try and conclude those appeals, because we are aware that that fishing season is due to open. Thank you very much. Otherwise, I think Ms. Middleton Ms. Middleton can't deal with appeals, but she can deal with the initial process. Thank you.
Ms. Middleton, the process.
Thank you very much, Minister. So as Minister correctly said, I can't respond to the points raised by Honourable Paulson or Honourable Bryant, as they do deal with the appeals. And so I think we would just appeal to the members to allow the appeals process to run its course. As Minister said, it's a very thorough process. In terms of the comments by Honourable Singh about and Honourable Ganshaw about fronting, what we're concerned about always in the fishing sector is not only fronting, but also paper quota holders. So people who have got a right, but who allow other people to fish on their behalf with no intention of ever investing in the fishery. And that is as bad as fronting. Our Act does allow us, if it is brought to our attention and we can prove that there is either paper quota holding or fronting, we can revoke the right. So, and that is why there is still an anonymous tip-off line whereby any member of the public can provide us with information that we then subject to a forensic investigation, and we can then take steps to revoke the right. In Honourable Weber, unfortunately, if you are unsuccessful and pending the outcome of the appeals, we cannot allow you to fish. And that is unfortunately just the reality. If we do that, if we allowed everybody to fish, we would exceed the effort and the TAC, which is equally bad fisheries management. So we do have to allow the appeals to run their course, and that if people become successful on appeal, they'll be allowed to fish from the start of the next fishing season. In terms of Honourable Weber and Winkler, I think as Minister has said, the unfortunate reality about a rights allocation process is that you're always going to get more applications than you can accommodate, and people are going to be unsuccessful. That is just the sad reality. We allocated in 9 fishing sectors, and Ministers mentioned the traditional lionfish sector and her concern there. But I don't think members must be under any misconception that 8 of the 9 sectors are highly sophisticated commercial sectors, where online applications is not an issue whatsoever. It was only the traditional lionfish sector where applicants applied as individuals, and some of them might have had challenges with the online application process, or they might have had data challenges. And that is the reason why we set up 10 decentralized centers around the country, whereby officials were on the ground to help people with their applications and their appeals. But I would argue that it's really only the traditional line sector that might have had issues with the online application process. And a decision was taken not to have a dual process because that raises challenges of its own. Let me leave it. In terms of Honourable Gancho, unfortunately, I don't have the stats on hand at the moment in terms of the comparison between the previous transformation profiles and the current, the 2021 ones. So with your consent, I would request to submit that in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. Final takers, honorable members. Are we, perhaps, Minister, do we have a projected time frame to conclude this process? Are we likely to just roughly speculate, just to project by when at least do we expect to have concluded this process?
Chair, we can put that slide back up again. We did give that time frames for each category of the appeals. We can put it back up again. If I can request the committee secretary to do that.
Well, it means I have jumped it. I have printed it here. It's fine. If it's there, I will just have to read it. It's okay. It's okay.
We're aiming to conclude the entire process by the end of October. But for each section, we have a time frame. We're now on section 2, and the intention, this includes lionfish, where the bulk of the hardship with the small players is, and we're trying to conclude that by the end of February due to the time frames of the fishing season. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I just saw it now. Honorable Bryant.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, it's just a brief follow-up in terms of stats around the impact that this will have positively or negatively on jobs and employment in the sector. Is this forming part of the overall evaluation that we will receive at the end of the appeals process in terms of the projected stats for employment and jobs in the sector as a result of these new allocations?
Honorable C.
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't know if I received a definitive answer to my earlier question, because I see there's a second presentation on the topic being conclusion of small-scale fishing rights allocations and support programs. Now, I know the minister did touch on it as a second phase. I don't know if we can ask questions to that, or will the department want to present the slides that they sent us, or what do you suggest? And like I said earlier on, time seems to be against us. Particularly, we have to be mindful of your commitment that you have, Chairperson. So I'll take guidance from you.
Thank you, Honorable C. Thank you very much also for the consideration. I suggest we just take that slide, that presentation, so that we then couple the questions. So we just take perhaps one round of questions.
Agreed.
Thank you. Who's doing that presentation of the small scale fishing rights allocation?
Sorry, Chair. Let me just assist Honorable Brandt. Chair, the fishing rights allocation process is based on the fishing policies. So there's the general policy, and there's also the sector specific policies. The general policy did go through the sales process, which is the socioeconomic impact assessment study. And obviously, at the conclusion of the process, once it's all settled down, it would then be possible and necessary, because I think these statistics are always collected by Stats SA, to collect the statistics on employment and livelihoods and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Is it Ms. Middleton again?
Chair, yes, I can quickly take you through the presentation on the small scale rights allocation process. I am supported by my colleague who could assist me with any questions as he's managing the process.
Sure.
So in terms of being mindful of time, if we can move to slide 2, which is just an outline of what the presentation covers. It covers where we are with the Western Cape process, including the distribution and verification process. The next topic is on the basket of species, the summary of progress on support programs provided to small-scale cooperatives to date, and then the plans to expand the support package. Next slide. So, as members will be aware, the Western Cape High Court granted the Minister's request to have the process set aside in the Western Cape on the 31st of August 2022. The department then immediately took steps to inform people about the new rights allocation process in the Western Cape, which included community meetings as well as several meetings with community-based organizations. And then from the 26th of September to the 7th of October, the department distributed the verification forms to affected communities, targeting the original 8,500 people who had applied, and this is in accordance with the court order. The department, upon request from the small-scale sector, granted an extra week in catch-all venues for people to come and collect verification forms or application forms. And then again, on request from CBOs, we granted a further month for fishers to complete their application forms before we went back to communities to receive the completed application forms. Next slide is just a summary we went out to 86 communities in the Western Cape. 5,275 people attended the meetings in person. There were 83 proxies, probably because the fishers could have been at sea. And there were 169 representatives of people who have since died or passed on since 2015. And of the 5,275 application forms that were distributed, the majority were in Afrikaans, with English second, and then isiXhosa application forms coming in at 263. Next slide. Again, the department undertook extensive mobilization and information sessions with the aim of communicating to applicants how we were going to come and collect or receive the completed forms. And we went into the field from the 5th to the 20th of December 2022. A total of 70 venues were used to collect application forms, covering 102 out of 109 identified small-scale communities. And those are the figures for the week whereby we collected application forms. Next slide. This is just a summary of where we are and where we're going to. So as I've said, the verification process and the receipting took place from the 5th to the 21st of December. From the 15th of December to the 9th of January, all the application forms were captured on a database. And right now, teams are working during February, January and February to assess the application forms with the intention to start announcing the outcomes or the results from the second week of Feb until March on a staggered basis. So once communities have been processed, we will make announcements. And then in May, we will assist with the registration of cooperatives, including a compulsory 2-day training workshop for the cooperatives, whereby we will be targeting about 80 communities. And then in July until September, we will be handing over the certificates and finalizing the grant of right letters. The intention is to have the Western Cape process completed by the end of February in anticipation of the opening of the West Coast rock lobster fishing season in October. In terms of the basket of species, various species have been set aside for the small scale sector, and some have been allocated to small scale cooperatives already in the other provinces. These include squid, as already mentioned in the FRAP process. The small scale sector will get up to 25% of the effort. Seaweed, which was allocated in 2015, 14 concession areas were set aside or reserved for small scale cooperatives. West Coast rock lobster, the proposals they get, they will be allocated 50% of the nearshore fishery and 20% of the offshore TAC. Then hake, handline, netfish, lionfish, and oysters and white mussels will go to small scale. We are also taking suggestions from small scale communities on additional species that can be added to the baskets. And once the FRAP appeals have been finalized, we will finalize the additional apportionment splits that can be made available to the small scale. For species such as traditional lionfish, we would look to increase the total allowable effort through Section 14 of the MLRA by allowing the small scale sector additional smaller vessels. We are also busy with the process of finalizing decisions on what to do with the abalone sector. And we are conducting a week-long abalone strategic planning workshop and compliance workshop in February. And then we are also looking at additional fisheries, such as experimental fisheries or exploratory fisheries, which can be made available to the sector. We're looking at anchovy for human consumption, abalone ranching in the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, and additionally to augment the value of fish through support programs to assist small-scale fishers to access markets and improved value chains. And I must throw in here that we mustn't forget inland and freshwater allocations to small-scale fishers. Next slide. Then the summary of progress to date. Through partnerships, the department has facilitated a number of interventions, and these include, but are not limited to, a MOU with the Department of Small Business Development, and a project implementation committee is up and operational with that department. All 110 small-scale fishing cooperatives have received training on basic fisheries-related business skills, financial management, and sea safety. And these workshops or training interventions targeted the board of directors of all the cooperatives. Through partnerships with the OR Tambo District Municipality and other municipalities, we have managed to conduct business entrepreneur training and the delivery of holding containers that include refrigeration and the handing over of various types of fishing equipment. Holding tanks have been handed over to more than 15 cooperatives through the intervention of the National Skills Fund. Next slide. Many of the cooperatives have been assisted with opening of bank accounts and have been provided with administrative support by lodging their returns through partnerships with provincial governments, particularly in the Eastern Cape. And an additional business management training has been offered to more than 10 cooperatives in KZN with the assistance of the Provincial Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. The department is currently rolling out an East Coast rock lobster fisheries improvement plan in partnership with the WWF in the Eastern Cape. And the department is currently in the process of piloting a co-management structure in Port St. John's, again in partnership with the WWF. Next slide. Lastly, we in the process of recruiting over 800 people to be employed by the department through our Working for Fisheries program. And these 800 people will firstly be appointed to assist with catch data monitoring or the recording of all fish landed by the recreational, small scale and commercial sector. There will be 600 of these data capturers or catch data monitors, and they will be recruited from the fishing communities. And in addition to that, over 200 individuals will be deployed to small-scale fishing cooperatives for the purposes of providing mentorship and support to each and every cooperative that has been granted a fishing right. And we are also busy finalizing MOUs with various other government departments, the private sector, some of whom are in the meeting, to assist us with the rolling out of various other capacity building initiatives to small scale fishers. And just lastly, training and capacity building is an ongoing and not a once-off process. Thank you, Chair. As I said, my colleague is available to assist with questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Middleton. Honorable members, can we take questions? Honorable Brian.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be as brief as possible, just taking into consideration the time constraints. Two very quick questions. The first one is in terms of the abalone working group or task team. I can't remember exactly what it was referred to as. Will there be an opportunity for members of that sector and local communities to be involved in that working group? And what areas of the country are being focused on in particular for ranching of abalone? And then just secondly, the previous contractor that was employed to undertake the small-scale process in the Western Cape, has that contractor been blacklisted or grey-listed from doing business with the state again? Thank you.
Honorable Paulson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Honorable Brian covered me on the issue of the former contractor that was supposed to do the small-scale fishing or undertake the small-scale fishing allocation process in the Western Cape and training. Chairperson, the other issue is these protected areas. What is the basis on declaring them protected areas, is this not where these species go and breed and populate the rest of the ocean? And then thirdly, in terms of the training and capacity building with the small scale fishers, are these people that are in the that have been given access to fish, or is it people who are hoping to be given access to go and fish? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Paulson. Honorable C.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation. I take it that the statistics that you presented, Ms. Middleton, relate to the Western Cape only, because there's a lot of reference to the Western Cape. And then I think right towards the end, there's some reference to KZN cooperatives and a little about the Eastern Cape. So I'd just like to know if at some stage we will be getting a presentation, particularly on the process regarding small-scale fishers, cooperatives, and most importantly, and I think Ms. Winkler is also passionate about this, the subsistence fishermen, fisher folks in KZN, so that we can engage and also appreciate whether enough consultation was done there, and if those livelihood fishermen are being taken on board, etc., in terms of permitting. So I'm asking that question on the basis that I think this is more for Western Cape rather than the other provinces. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable C. Honorable Gancho.
Thank you, Chairperson, and also wanted to thank the Mrs. Walter for the presentation. Chair, I just want to check with them if they can provide us with more details on the support provided to the cooperatives by OR Tambo District Municipality and other municipalities. And secondly, Chair, how many cooperatives received refrigerated holding containers and fishing equipment through the partnership of OR Tambo District Municipality and other municipalities? And the third one, Chair, before the last one, how many cooperatives received business entrepreneurship training, and where was it provided? Lastly, Chair, if they can also tell us what is the East Coast Rock Lobster Fishery Improvement Project and what is its goals and objectives? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Gancho. Ms. Middleton.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will respond to the first question asked by Honourable Bryant on the abalone workshop. And then I will ask my colleague, Mr. Ngongwa, to take the other questions. So, Honourable Bryant, we are holding a week-long workshop on abalone. To develop an abalone anti-poaching strategy, but it's going to touch on various other aspects of the abalone fishery. It's taking place from the 27th of February to the 3rd of March in Stellenbosch, and we are doing it in partnership with Operation Pakisa, Fish Force, and other NGOs who are also offering financial support to communities so that they are able to attend the workshop. And there will be a number of work streams dealing with different aspects of the fishery. Should anyone be interested in attending, they can make contact with me and we can extend an invitation. And then I'm going to ask my colleague, Mr. Ngongwa, to deal with the blacklisting, the ranching, and the other questions asked by Honourable Singh and Honourable Gancha. Thanks, Chair.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members, Minister and colleagues. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll be going through some of the questions and providing responses. With regards to the issue of abalone ranching and the areas that have been focused on, it's the Eastern Cape primarily, from south of Dwesatwebe, MPA, all the way down to Jeffreys Bay, whereby as part of the rights that were allocated in 2020 for small-scale fishing cooperatives in the Eastern Cape, we included abalone ranching as part of the basket of species. And then the plans are that for the Western Cape as well, there are areas that have been set aside or earmarked for abalone ranching around the Claremont area. And also we are looking at the possibility of extending that to the Northern Cape for the Honeycliffe and Port Nolo small-scale fishing cooperatives that were allocated fishing rights in 2018. With regards to the previous contractor that conducted the process in 2016, there is a legal process that was set in place as the entity also submitted a complaint to the department, and we are dealing with that particular legal process in ensuring that whatever that needs to be done from our side as the department in defending the position of the department, noting the position that we were in after the work that was done by the service provider. However, I think it's a point taken that maybe as a department, we need to put measures in place in ensuring that the service provider is not going to do business with the department again in this regard. Then moving to Honorable Paulson, the issue of MPAs. I think this one, it's very broad. It might require some time to unpack it. However, in relation to the small-scale fisheries sector, a number of NPAs have been set up in such a way that small-scale fishers are allowed to fish within MPAs where the regulations allow so. A typical case in point is that of the Dwesatwebe MPA, where there are controlled zones to cater for small-scale fishers to fish within the MPAs. Then the training is mainly focused at and ensuring that the cooperatives, they are capacitated to run business entities in a form of cooperatives within the context of the fishing sector. And these have been provided throughout in all the cooperatives that have fishing rights as we speak. And this training was provided to the cooperatives that already have fishing rights, and the idea was to ensure that whatever rights that are allocated to them, they're able to be sustainable through those rights. However, through the socioeconomic baseline study that we conducted, it was quite clear that cooperatives are not going to be able to sustainably manage their cooperatives if there is no proper support provided by government and other partners. And hence we're honing in on providing the necessary capacity, such as training and providing equipment. And then moving to Honorable Singh, one of the reasons why the presentation is focusing mainly on the Western Cape process was due to the fact that the Western Cape is the province that has been falling behind as compared to other provinces, as the only province whereby small-scale fishing rights have not yet been allocated. And there's been a lot of work that has been focused in ensuring that this province catches up with other provinces. However, when it comes to KZN, there's a lot that is happening. The department is working very closely with the provincial departments and to some extent municipalities such as Mandeni municipality and many other municipalities that have provided the necessary support directly to the cooperatives. Then when it comes to KZN subsistence fishers, Honorable member might recall that the department did announce that there was a task team that was set up between the department and the leaders of the KZN subsistence fishers, and a number of engagements have taken place. What we've noted from our side was that after we had provided the necessary information and what it means to be a subsistence fisher within the context of the current MLRA, a lot of issues were resolved in that process. However, as a task team, we identified that we need to identify the people who are requiring to access fishing in KZN who are not part of this process. And through a Legal Resources Center, KZN, and the various community-based organizations in KwaZulu-Natal representing subsistence fishers, we have a specific roadmap of how we are going to get to that point. What we've also identified was that there was a drive to introduce people to fishing under the small-scale fisheries banner, and of which we provided clarity to that in terms of what the definition of a small-scale fisher is and how the subsistence definition features within the definition of small-scale. So we are working quite well as part of that task team to an extent that we last met on the 30th of November last year, whereby we had agreed that through UKZN we are going to launch a study looking at access to fishing on the East Pier and I think it's North Pier as well, where there are challenges, and hence we will have to engage with the Port Authority as well. So there's a lot of work that has been taking place between the department and the subsistence fishers in that area. Then lastly, Honorable Kancho, more details on support provided by OR Tambo. We can most definitely avail this information. We have been working with the OR Tambo District Municipality for a very long time now. Honorable members might recall that when we launched small-scale fisheries and presented fishing rights in the Eastern Cape to 53 cooperatives, we launched that in OR Tambo in Umtata. And out of that launch, there was a concerted effort from the different officials from the different organizations to work together in providing that support. And as early as the previous quarter, there were about 8 cooperatives that received refrigerated containers that were handed over to those communities, and we have a list of those cooperatives that have received that, and the OR Tambo District Municipality handed over that equipment together with the department. And that is not the only supporting program that the OR Tambo District Municipality has been involved in, and other municipalities out of the 5 municipalities under OR Tambo, I think about 3 of them have already provided that support. The other one being the Port St. John's municipality that has also provided fishing equipment to the cooperatives around the Port St. John's area, and they're also involved in the pilot project of East Coast Rock Lobster and the establishment of co-management structures under the municipality. Then coming to the East Coast Rock Lobster pilot project, the idea for this is to develop a business model on how best the East Coast Rock Lobster as a species can be placed similarly to where the West Coast Rock Lobster is. East Coast Rock Lobster, it's a high valued species. To some extent, it might be potentially higher than the West Coast Rock Lobster, and it is available to communities in Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, and there's limited access to markets for that particular species for a number of reasons. Some of the reasons relates to accessibility to the fishing grounds and also accessibility to the markets, noting the conditions of the roads. So what the department has done was to commission a business study on how we can best improve the East Coast Rock Lobster as one of the high-value species. And we're at a stage now whereby we are piloting that. And once that becomes successful, we will have the specific business model that we can roll it out to all the communities that have access to East Coast Rock Lobster in Eastern Cape and in KwaZulu-Natal. Then I think that's it, Honorable Chair, but for any specifics in terms of the names of cooperatives that have been provided specific fishing equipment, we can most definitely make those documents available. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. I think that is how we must resolve that the committee will get that information perhaps in writing, so that Honorable Kancho and others who who require that information can do necessary follow-ups. Honorable Paulsen, is that a heritage hand?
Yeah, I'm an old hand.
Oh yeah. Honorable Mbata.
Thank you, Chair. I will ask just few questions. Is that on the issue of Western Cape? I don't know whether it has been asked. How many were part? How many community members were part of 2005-2006 court action? Have since passed on without being allocated small-scale fishing rights up to date. What sort of justice is the department considering for such households? And then there's the other one that deals with women where they were previously disqualified because of the set of qualifying criteria. What was the issue of women and youth considered in the revamped small-scale fishing rights allocation process in the Western Cape? Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Middleton.
Chair, again, I'm going to ask Mr. Mgonkwa to answer that.
All right.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you, Honorable Mbata. On the first issue of the deceased, currently we have 169 people who participated in the 2016 process who have since passed away. The small-scale fisheries policy and the process in its entirety does recognize the fact that once a small-scale fishing community is declared, it will always be declared. It can never be undeclared. And there's an understanding that individuals are going to evolve within a cooperative. And one of the things that we had put in place in the constitution of each and every cooperative, there is a bylaw that looks at beneficiation of members of the deceased or family members of the deceased when a cooperative has been allocated a fishing right. And also, if a person was declared successful before a right was allocated, how will the families of the person who has passed away benefit from the rights? So this goes back to how the cooperative is going to commit itself, noting that there were certain individuals who might have passed away throughout the process. So this has been done already in all the other cooperatives that have been allocated fishing rights, and ensuring that if a person has passed away, how will the families of the deceased benefit out of the right that is allocated to a cooperative? So that is how that has been accommodated. Then with regards to the issues of women and disqualifying criteria, when it comes to the small-scale fisheries policy, interests or participation of women, youth, and people living with disabilities is highlighted as issues that we need to ensure that we do not leave behind. To an extent that when each cooperative applies for a fishing right, they need to specify how are they going to promote the interests of women, youth, and people living with disabilities. And hence, being a woman in the small-scale fisheries process, it's not a negative criteria. In fact, it actually promotes for people in that category to be highlighted as important in that process. So even in the previous process, there was no disqualification or a negative marking because a person was a woman. So the policy is very clear on that one. And then moving on this new process again, at this point in time, there's not been any negative marking or criteria that inhibits people because they are women in the process. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngongwa. Thank you very much to the Minister and the Deputy Minister. Thank you very much to the DG. Special gratitude goes to all the members of the committee. That brings us to the end of the meeting. With all of that being said, I wish you a pleasant day further, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.